everyone, Josh Davis here for a review of the Nikon 105 f2 defocus control lens. This is the first review that I've done in a while, actually. And I've actually finally gotten my hands on a camera that shoots HD video, so hopefully going forward you guys won't have to be subjected to that horrible video coming from the webcam in my computer. So without further ado, let's get on with the lens first. A little bit about the background and the overall construction of the lens. Alright, so a little background on this lens. It's fairly old. It came out in the mid-90s, I believe 95, but it's still a fantastic lens. It is pro quality and still sells today for about $1,000. The lens itself is made of solid metal. It is pretty heavy, and it's made pretty much all of metal except for the focusing ring here, which is rubber, and the focus selector, either auto or manual focus, or the defocus control wheel. These are both plastic. It also has this old aperture ring. Being a lens from the 90s, these still had the plastic aperture rings on it, so that is plastic, but everything else is metal. And I do have a filter on it. I believe it is, yeah, it's a 72 millimeter thread. And I'm kind of anal about my lenses. I always put the protective filter on every lens I get. But with this lens, you could really run into trouble when shooting around the sun because this retractable lens hood doesn't really cover that much. You can see, if you look in, the actual front element is pretty far down deep. It's probably 2 inches away from the filter, so if you're shooting around the sun, you're going to get some glare and some sunspots on the lens. So if you're just doing portraits and you have to shoot around or in the sun, you might want to take the filter off, but again, I'm pretty nuts about my lenses. I always leave the filters on. So the lens hood does retract, so that's kind of a nice feature. And again, this is all metal as well, and you just kind of have to twist it a little bit to make it go in and out. The rear element of the lens is also all metal, and that the glass part of the rear element is right up against the back. So you can see here that it's right there. So you have to be careful when you have the cap off and you're handling the lens. There is no weather sealing around this back part because it is a older lens. But yeah, build quality is really solid. It's a hefty lens. It's a pro lens. It's definitely a lens for doing portraits, especially on a full frame camera. It absolutely rocks. To adjust these wheels, all I have to do is just hold in this metal button here and turn it. You can see them in manual focus and now autofocus. And then these are the defocus control functions, which I'll talk about a little later. But again, you just hold down this metal button here and twist it until the number matches up with the line here. So that's it about construction. It's a solid, hefty, professional lens, an A+ in terms of build quality. Excellent lens from Nikon. Let's talk about the performance of the lens and see it on the camera body. Alright, so here's the lens on the D700, and as you can see, they are quite the pair together. This lens rocks on a full-frame camera like the D700. It's perfect for portraits, and like I said, it's an f2 lens, so when you shoot at f2 wide open, it is tack sharp. This is probably one of the sharpest lenses you could find for doing portraits, and on the D700, on a full-frame camera, it absolutely shines. And don't get me wrong, it does great on a DX camera too, but you know, for a lens that's designed to work on a full-frame film camera, you're probably better off using it on an actual full-frame camera. So, you know, in terms of performance, the lens absolutely rocks. There's not really much else to say. I can demonstrate the focus speed here, as you can watch this little screen here. You can see it is pretty quick. So for a lens that it doesn't really have an internal focus motor, it relies on the screw drive focus of the camera body. But with a D700 or any of the newer Nikon cameras these days, the focusing is lightning quick. But since there is no internal motor, it won't work the autofocus won't work on cameras without a focus motor in them, such as the D40, the D60, and I believe the D3000 and the D5000. They don't have internal focusing motors, so this lens won't autofocus on those cameras. But again, if you're doing portraits with those cameras, this lens would be perfectly fine. You would just have to manually focus it. So onto this defocus control feature, which is really cool and is the signature of these lenses. How it works is you set an aperture here in the camera. Let's set this to say f2.8. You would then turn this wheel to the aperture that you set. If you turn it to the right, R, that means you're controlling the out of focus parts in the rear part of the image. And then on the F, if you turn it to the F side, you're controlling the out of focus elements in the foreground of the image. So what you use this for is if you're doing portraits and you want the background to be really out of focus, you would set this ring to the aperture of your lens. So for example, since we set an aperture of 2.8, I'm going to set this to the 2.8 on the rear side to sort of increase the creaminess, the blurriness, or whatever you call it, of the out of focus bits of the background. Now, some tricks you can play with this lens is you can get some soft focus effects with it. If I raise this number to a number higher than my aperture, for example, to f5.6, then you'll see parts of the image that were supposed to be sharp have sort of a soft focus type effect to it. So that's basically how this works. It's pretty easy to learn. You just set it to whatever your aperture is, and it sort of enhances those out of focus elements to the photo. I have read that this sort of plastic ring is broken with time and people have had issues with it, but it's been pretty solid for me. I take good care of my stuff, and I haven't really had any issues. So that's pretty much it. This lens is a rockin' lens. It's probably the best lens that I own. And when it comes to doing portraits, if I could have only one lens, this would be it. It absolutely rocks. So thanks for checking out the video review. If you want to see some samples, head on over to my website, bustedshutter.com. I'm Josh Davis. Thanks for watching, and please rate, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll talk to you later. Cheers.
High on a hill was a lonely goat herd.